Hello, I'm doing a book review, and the book I want to review is Superman and Bugs Bunny. Now, Superman and Bugs Bunny is a 4-issue comic book series written by Mark Evanier. I'm not sure if I'm saying his last name right, and this was published in 2000. However, this particular paperback was published in 2017. Now, Superman and Bugs Bunny is pretty much what the title implies. It's a crossover between DC and Looney Tunes, where the Looney Tunes characters like Bugs Bunny, Elmer Fudd, Porky Pig, Foghorn Leghorn meet the DC characters like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Green Arrow, Green Lantern, etc. Essentially, I guess you could say it's a what-if story, where what if the DC universe and the Looney Tunes universe were coexisting parallel universes, and what if those two universes started to merge? In some ways, the story is sort of a parody of the Crisis on Infinite Earth story arc. In fact, the 4th issue of this series, or the 4th chapter, if you will, is called Crisis on Infinite Earths. Now, the plot of Superman and Bugs Bunny is it begins where Superman encounters... Now, I know this character's name, but I can't for the life of me pronounce this character's name. It starts with an M. Most people who are watching this video probably already know the character I'm talking about. I just can't for the life of me pronounce this character's name, but I'm in good company because at one point, even Bugs Bunny says he can't pronounce this character's name. But the character I'm talking about, he's the imp from the 5th dimension that if Superman manages to get him to say his name backwards, he gets sent back to his dimension. I know who that character is, but I can't for the life of me pronounce that character's name. But I know the character of Batmite is supposed to be the same type of creature that he is. But basically, in the beginning of the story, Superman encounters this character, and he manages to get him to say his name backward, and he's sent back to the 5th dimension. But basically, on his way to the 5th dimension, he crosses paths with Yoyo the Dodo, and the two of them team up, and now they're planning on merging the DC universe and the Looney Tunes universe permanently. So, the Looney Tunes characters start crossing over into the DC universe, and Superman, Batman, and the rest of the Justice League are now trying to figure out what's going on, and eventually the Looney Tunes characters and the Justice League team up to try to stop Toyman, who's now robbing all these banks, and eventually they both try to figure out how to fix their universes. And that's the basic plotline of Superman and Bugs Bunny. Now, Superman and Bugs Bunny, I thought was really fun. I mean, it's silly, but it's definitely meant to be. I mean, if you're going into something called Superman and Bugs Bunny and expecting the equivalent of The Dark Knight Returns, then that's kind of on you. But yeah, this is a really fun story, and I highly recommend it. I mean, it's definitely meant for kids, but I think adults could enjoy it as well. And the book is filled with a lot of jokes and references I think DC fans would really appreciate, like the 2nd chapter of this book where Elmer Fudd becomes Superman is called The Last Sun on Krypton, and the 3rd chapter where Daffy Duck becomes Batman is called The Duck Knight Returns. And in the parts of this book that deal with Batman, there's a few references to George Clooney, because this was published only a few years after Batman and Robin, and like, there's a part where Daffy Duck tells Batman, "Do you think George Clooney will play me in the movie?" Like, he says something like that, and I think Tweety Bird also says something similar as well. One moment in the comic that I thought was really funny was a part where Foghorn Leghorn sees Clark Kent, and he immediately knows it's Superman, and he's like, "Son, those glasses aren't fooling anybody." He also makes a little reference to Action Comics, which I thought was really funny because that was the comic book series where Superman originated, and while Superman is flying away, he says, "I'll have to remember to ask him what he meant by Action Comics." One moment in the story that for some reason really cracked me up, there's a part where all the DC characters and the Looney Tunes characters are together, and for some reason I found this to be really funny. You have Yosemite Sam yelling at Superman going, "You think you're so tough? Well, you ain't messed with me." And Superman just thinks to himself, "And I sure hope I never do." For some reason, that really cracked me up, and yes, I know, I did a terrible Yosemite Sam impression. There's also sort of a running gag in the story where Green Arrow has Michigan J. Frog, and he's trying to prove to people that he can sing and dance, but every time he opens the box, the frog just goes ribbit, and everybody thinks Green Arrow is going crazy. I thought that was really funny. But yeah, I really enjoyed Superman and Bugs Bunny, and I definitely recommend this if you're a DC fan and a Looney Tunes fan. Now, I'll be the first to admit that I'm not like a die-hard Looney Tunes fan. I, of course, know who the Looney Tunes are, and I've grew up watching some of the Looney Tunes cartoons, but it's been like a dog's age since I've actually watched any of those cartoons. There are also a few references to Space Jam in this comic, because this was written only a few years after Space Jam came out. But yeah, that was my review on Superman and Bugs Bunny, and bye.